Hi, my name's Gareth and I make videos helping people to get high scores in the IELTS test. Recently I had a question from someone asking how we should compare in IELTS Writing Task 1. Obviously this is an important thing to do in this task. So that's what I want to talk about in this video. How to compare in IELTS Writing Task 1. The person who asked this question was actually asking whether we should be using superlatives or comparatives to compare things in Task 1. My simple answer to them was, well, you should probably try to use both. Because the more grammatical range and lexical resource we show the examiner, the higher score we're going to get. So you've got to compare in as many different ways as you can. What I want to do in this video is show an example Task 1 question and show you a few different ways to compare. And I'll explain kind of where and when in your response you should be using these types of sentences to compare. Of course, in IELTS Writing Task 1, there are probably 4 main types of task where you have to compare data. And those are the ones we're going to focus on in this video. That is the line graph, the bar chart, the pie chart, and the table. Those are the 4 types where you're definitely going to have to compare numbers and data. There are 2 other types, which are diagrams, but we can leave that for another day. So, this is the task that we're going to look at in this video. You can see that it is a table, or 2 tables, and it's showing you the sales of 2 types of product. That is coffee and bananas, and we've got data for 5 different countries there and 2 separate years. So you can see some changes there as well. But in this video, we're not going to focus on describing changes. We're going to focus on how we can compare the data and compare the different countries that are shown in the table. So, first of all, the first paragraph you're going to be writing for this will be an introduction. And in the introduction, there's no real comparing. But the next thing you'll do, you'll move on to an overview. Now, this is the structure I will use when I'm teaching students, and there is an older video showing you this structure, which has 4 paragraphs in total. And it might be an idea to have a look at that video to really understand what I'm talking about here. But in our overview paragraph, we're going to have to start comparing some of this data. Now, what I think is in at least one of the sentences, you could do this. Now, you'll see here, we've got overall, the UK saw by far the highest levels of spending on the 2 products. So you can see here, we're using a superlative. Highest, right? We're looking at what country had the highest amount of spending on both products. And we're making sure that we're showing that this is part of the overview paragraph, so it's overall. We're not looking at any specific figures here, but you can see from the table, overall, the UK does have the highest level of spendings. We've also added the phrase by far the highest levels. By saying by far, it means, well, it's a lot higher. And you can see there from the numbers, generally they are a lot higher than the other countries. Apart from in 1 year for coffee in 1999. But of course, we're looking at overall. This is the overview we're looking at here. So you can also see there, when we've mentioned the country, we've used the verb see. The UK saw by far the highest levels of spending. That's another thing to note, that in English we can actually do this with countries and use the verb see, but it might seem a bit strange to some people. But that's an example sentence that is comparing the UK with all the other countries, and we're using a superlative. Of course, you could go on and say what were the lowest levels of spending, but I feel like we don't really need to do that here because there isn't one country that stands out that we can put in the overview. So that's the first example sentence of how we can compare things in IELTS Writing Task 1. Let's look at another sentence that you would normally see in the detail paragraphs where we're comparing specific figures. But again, we're going to be using the superlatives. So another sentence showing you that. Here it is. In 1999, Switzerland had the highest sales of fair trade coffee at 3 million euros. While revenue from fair trade bananas was highest in the UK at 15 million euros. So you can see here we've got a bit of a longer sentence and we're comparing two specific figures while we're comparing coffee and bananas and Switzerland and the UK. We're comparing a lot of things here. We're using the superlative highest again. In fact, we're using it twice, right? Switzerland had the highest sales of fair trade coffee, whereas the UK had the highest sales of fair trade bananas. You can see the structures here are slightly different. In the first part of the sentence about Switzerland, we've got Switzerland at the beginning of the sentence. Switzerland had the highest sales. Also, we're using the verb have here rather than using the verb saw again. And in the second sentence, we're leaving the country to the end of the sentence. Revenue from fair trade bananas was highest in the UK. We're using lots of synonyms here. Let's just focus on comparing and how we're doing that for now. You can see the superlatives. Also, in the middle of the sentence, we're using a conjunction to compare the word while after a comma, working in the same way that a word like but would work. So different ways to compare there. I mean, you can see superlatives, but then you can also see the conjunction while. So some useful ways to compare specific figures there. What I want to do as well now is give you another example sentence where we're not using a superlative, but we're using a comparative. Let's have a look at this one. Sales of the two fair trade products were far lower in Denmark, Belgium, and Sweden. So we're looking at three countries we haven't mentioned yet. This kind of sentence would probably come in the detail paragraphs. But here we're comparing with the comparative lower. Sales of two fair trade products were far lower in Denmark, Belgium, and Sweden. Notice there how we're not just using the word lower on its own, we're using the word far again, which means much lower. And that just adds a bit more detail, and it's true. You can see the figures there for Denmark, Belgium, and Sweden are much lower for both products, coffee and bananas. So there we go. I mean, we've looked at a few different sentences which are comparing. One with a comparative adjective and then two other ones where we're using superlatives, but then some other ways as well to compare by using conjunctions such as while or but. This is showing you several different ways that we need to compare, and it's not the only ways. It's just a few examples of how we can compare data in Writing Task 1. It's really important that you know as many different ways as possible and you're ready to use them when you're in the test. There's not just one way that you've got to compare. If you only use one way, it's not going to show a great range of grammar or a great range of vocabulary. And that's something you have to show to get a high score in the IELTS writing test. So there we go. I hope that's been useful for you. And if you did find it useful, don't forget to give the video a like. And also, if you don't want to miss out on any future videos on similar topics, then remember to click the subscribe button. There we have it. Thanks for watching and see you again in the next video.